And dust and drought. Looking for rain. Finn stood beside his grandfather, staring out at the crops that were dying in the field. His grandfather had planted acres of corn that were in desperate need of water. If the rain didn't come soon, Finn knew the crop could not survive a continued drought. He wished he knew a way to help, but he couldn't make it rain, and neither could his grandfather. The sound of thunder rumbling in the distance brought the only hope they had been given in weeks. The clouds are moving fast, his grandfather's voice seemed to rumble deep in his chest, much like the noises of thunder overhead. Finn knew it was probably his imagination, but he almost felt like his grandfather was such a powerful man that he could simply will the rain to come, and it would have to come. Does that mean it will rain? Finn asked. His grandfather nodded his head slowly, and a small grin tugged at the corners of his mouth. I think it just might, Finn. I can smell the rain in the air. It's close. It's definitely close. Finn tilted his face to the clouds. He breathed in deeply. He wanted to smell the rain the way his grandfather had. He wanted to know the rain was close. He wanted to believe that the crop would be saved and that the earth would have all the water it needed. Thoughts raced through his head as the first drop of rain fell onto his cheek. He looked at the black clouds overhead and glanced quickly towards his grandfather. He watched as the first drop hit against his arm. He saw the relief in his grandfather's eyes as more and more drops fell from the clouds. Finn thought he could hear the earth sigh. Are we going inside, Grandfather? Not today, he answered. Let's find a seat on the porch and listen to the sound of the rain on the roof. Today, I believe it just might sound like music to my ears. Finn listened. He could hear the music. The sound was perfect. Dust and drought. From 1931 to 1937, the central regions of the United States, including such states as Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, and Nebraska, were negatively affected by severe droughts. The area affected spread all the way from Texas to Canada. This lack of rain made life nearly unbearable for those who tried to live during these years. One area where the drought was the most severe simply became known as the Dust Bowl. People in this area were farmers. The lack of rain made it nearly impossible to grow any type of crop. With what little rain they did receive was never enough. Grasshoppers were another enemy of the struggling farmers. Anything they did grow was immediately consumed by the insects. Grasshoppers were even known to consume the clothes people hung out on the lines to dry. If there were no crops to eat, they would find food in the natural fibers that made up the farmers' clothes. The soil became so dusty that winds blowing across the prairie would churn the dust into huge clouds that would cover entire towns. The storms formed walls of dust that made it hard for people to breathe. Much of the dust found its way into the lungs of the men, women, and children who lived on the plains. Because water was scarce, people had to be careful with how much they used. People needed water to drink and to wash their clothes. The storms caused the dust to seep into the cracks of houses. It would cover everything inside a home. However, there wasn't enough water to make everything clean again. Eventually, new farming methods helped minimize the impact of the storms that brought so much dust to the area. Today, modern farmers know to protect the soil. They even plow in special ways to stop the soil from blowing when the winds move across the prairies. No one can control the rain, but through better methods of farming, the devastation that occurred in the 1930s should never happen again.